Gentleman yields. I now recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for showing up. You guys aren't exactly attorney generals of southern border states, are you? But even you guys are feeling the effects of what's coming across that southern border. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Gentlemen, how long roughly did it take you to become attorney general? Go ahead, Mr. Knudsen.
Well, roughly how long? I mean, campaigned for the better part of a year.
No, entire career. Just like 20 years, 15 years, how long did it?
Roughly 15 years.
What about you, Mr. Drummond?
40.
Mr. Bailey?
Been practicing law for 10 years.
Yeah, so you guys just didn't wake up one day and say, I want to be attorney general, and snap, that happened, right? I noticed that some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been trying to diminish your qualifications. What's the primary responsibility of the federal government, Mr. Knudsen?
Primary responsibility of the federal government is to carry out and execute the laws of the Congress.
Yeah, is it to protect our unalienable God-given rights as well?
Absolutely.
What about, does our government have a responsibility to protect its citizens, Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Are any of you guys familiar with Article 4, Section 4 of our Constitution, often called the Invasion Clause? Anybody?
Yes.
I'm going to read it real quick. The United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. Now, there's arguments right now about whether or not this is an invasion, but it's tough to argue when you have the equivalent of a combat division size of illegals coming across our southern border. For those of you that don't know, that's 10,000 individuals every single day in invasion. And we've talked about what comes with those individuals from crime, the economic burdens on our citizens, the families being destroyed of fentanyl. You guys are all familiar with that. You guys see them every single day in your own states. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you guys aware of the job title of Alejandro Mayorkas, Mr. Knudsen?
His specific job title is Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security.
Secretary of Homeland Security. Now, I'm no constitutional scholar, Mr. Drummond, but just from that job title alone, would you assess that maybe his job might be to secure and protect the homeland?
He has the duty to control and guard our homeland.
Mr. Bailey, is Secretary Mayorkas doing that?
He has abdicated his official legal responsibilities and his moral and ethical responsibilities to this nation.
Mr. Knudsen, is he doing that?
He absolutely is not. He is derelict in many of those duties.
One of my colleagues talked about the difference between individuals crossing on the terror watch list between the Biden administration, Secretary Mayorkas, and the former administration. Those numbers were a stark contrast. Under the last administration, 14 individuals on the terror watch list came through, were encountered at that southern border. Under this administration, and we still have several months to go in this new year, already 300 individuals on the terror watch list. Are you gentlemen aware of how many individuals it took to pull off 9/11?
Not 300.
Yep, it was about 19. Does it concern you guys, as folks that are concerned with the security of citizens in your state, that something like that might happen in the United States of America or your state?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
You guys talked about it all day long, and I find it interesting that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle kept saying that we're grandstanding here, or we're just campaigning, or these are political differences. But you guys, all three of you, and we went over how long it took you to get in your positions. You guys are like the highest law enforcement officials in your state. You guys all went over not just the policy differences, but the different laws that this secretary is in violation of. Mr. Knudsen, can you go over some of those really quick?
I absolutely can. I think the Secretary is clearly in violation of USC 8, Section 1225. He's clearly violated Section 1182 by granting mass parole. The Immigration and Naturalization Act makes very clear that that is not to be granted on a mass basis. That's to be granted on a case-by-case, individual basis.
Yep, thank you, sir. Ms. Jackson and Mr. Bowman both said that betrayal of a nation is one of the criteria necessary for impeachment. If allowing the equivalent of an army division of illegals coming across the southern border on a daily basis, causing the deaths of hundreds of thousands due to fentanyl every single, about 100,000 every year, enabling the sex trade in this country, along with the importation of thousands of MS-13 gang members, causing the encounters of individuals on the terror watch list to go from 14 under the last administration to 300 on this this administration, lying to Congress about having operational control, costing the American taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars for housing and care for these illegals, and more than 24,000 people from the Republic of China coming across our southern border in this last year alone. If those aren't betrayal to a nation, I don't know what is. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, for his questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today. Thank you guys for coming. I want to especially thank Dr. Fu and Mr. Freedom for your leadership and courage on this issue. I know it can't be easy to do that. And I hope that Americans that are watching this, I mean, a lot of Americans, Mr. Freedom, look up to you because you were good at basketball, and God blessed you with, height and skill and all that. But I hope Americans watching this really appreciate your courage, because you're one of the few that actually is willing to set aside their own personal career and their ability to gain, resources and fame and all that for something bigger. So thank you for doing that. Now I want to ask you guys some serious questions. Neither of you guys were born here, Dr. Fu or Mr. Freedom, right? You guys weren't born here in America, but you came here to this country, right? Hoping to, maybe have a better life. Would you say that? Thank you. Mr. Freedom, did you ever think that when you came to the United States of America, you'd see Chinese spy balloons flying over the country?
Definitely not.
Did you think that or this is for you too, Dr. Fu, did you think you would encounter this type of repression from the Chinese Communist Party? Did you think it'd be allowed here in the United States of America?
Definitely not. It was very surreal, even when those people showed up in West Texas. I remember some of our cowboys are trying to work something out, but our church actually encouraged to give them water, to love them instead. But this is very surreal. I think.
I bet.
Yeah.
Mr. Freedom, why do you think it's allowed here? Why do you think we allow Chinese police stations here in the United States of America? Why do you think you see Chinese spy balloons flying over the U.S.? Why do you think individuals like you and Dr. Fu are oppressed here as American citizens?
The more I research, the more I realize NBA is not the only one. I mean, you see Hollywood, Wall Street, academias, big tech, Wall Street. Many of them is partly controlled by the Chinese government because of money.
Money. That's right. That's what it is, isn't it, sir? It's not just the NBA.
That's NBA, no.
Both of you guys count on the United States government to some extent for your own protection. Is that correct?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. Money. Does it bother either of you guys? And you guys are both truth tellers, and you guys have a lot of courage to be here, but I'm going to take it one step further. Does it bother either of you guys that this current administration and the family of this current administration has taken money, millions of dollars from the CCP? Does that bother you, Mr. Freedom? Does it concern you?
Yes, of course.
Dr. Fu, does it concern you?
Of course, it's very concerning. This is just a reflection of how the CCP's effort for years. It's not just for, in the past few years. But I just feel it's very concerning to see when a group of dissidents, welcoming the Taiwan president in Manhattan, on the street of Manhattan in New York, and 5 were beaten violently and sent to hospital by the Chinese government hired thugs on our soil, and so far no one is being held accountable.
Yeah,
Not a
that's
single
interesting.
one. Why?
Dr. Fu, do you think that we have the Hunter Biden laptop, which has all sorts of, very, disturbing information, photographs, text messages, emails on it? Do you think that CCP might have their own copy, their own information on the president's son, Mr. Freedom?
Of course, not only him, but whoever is using TikTok. Yes, they have all their informations. And
Yeah,
150 million people.
That's interesting. Mr. Freedom, are you aware of the fact that Hunter Biden, James Biden, Sarah Jones Biden, Haley Biden, Kathleen Buell, Melissa Cohen, Hunter Biden's current wife, 2 children of Joe Biden's sons, Joe Biden's brother's child, have all received money that was doled out from, that originated from foreign countries?
I know some of it, but I didn't know the whole thing.
Yeah. Are either of you familiar with the term elite capture? Elite capture?
No.
That's where a foreign country uses money and other things to influence and often co-opt high-ranking officials. Are you guys familiar with that?
Well, I actually tried to have a meeting with President Biden and also someone from his administration, and I got turned down every time.
Imagine
the Turkish
that.
government put a bounty on my head, actually, and I was like, I'm a U.S. citizen, and a foreign government is doing it in U.S. soil. This is unacceptable, and I would like to talk to my president or someone from the administration. One of the senator, who's a Democrat, said this is not going to happen because, unfortunately, the president is scared of Erdogan because of Erdogan is a NATO ally, and he doesn't want to piss him off.
Well, the last thing I want to say, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me extra time. Again, thank you, guys. What you are doing is monstrously courageous, and we appreciate you guys. And I think it's pathetic that you've come here to the United States, and this is what the country has turned into. So thank you guys for doing what you're doing.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Dunn, Ms. Nobles, thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you for your courage. Ms. Dunn happens to be a constituent of mine. She once confronted me at a town hall in Yavapai County and begged me to do something about this invasion at our southern border. Honestly, I couldn't blame her one bit. As a father, I would have done the exact same thing that you did, ma'am. Ms. Dunn, after listening to my Democratic colleagues today, I think you probably had a decent idea of what the problem was before you came up here, but I think it's a lot more in focus now, is it not? I'm glad you had a chance to confront the problem today. We will continue to confront the problem, but I'm glad you got a chance to see it for yourself. Ms. Pearlstein, you said during the audio recording that the chairman played, one of the criteria for impeachment is serious offenses against public trust. Do you still stand by this comment today, ma'am?
As I've explained before, offenses against the public trust are instances in which an official is willfully acting for his own benefit or the benefit of his own power or on behalf of a foreign power.
Thank you. How is this border crisis that has been planned and executed by Secretary Mayorkas not a serious offense to public trust, Ms. Pearlstein?
Having read through the materials, I see no evidence that Secretary Mayorkas has acted on behalf of his own benefit, financially or politically, and I see no evidence that there is collusion or other cooperation or acting on behalf of foreign power.
Do you see evidence of betrayal of public trust? If you need help finding that, ma'am, look to your right. There's two mothers in here that have had their complete lives destroyed, their families destroyed. I'm going to ask Ms. Dunn, has your public trust in Secretary Mayorkas and the Department of Homeland Security been broken?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Nobles,
Yes.
do you guys feel betrayed by Secretary Mayorkas and the Department of Homeland Security? You guys know his job is Secretary of Homeland Security. His job, in his title, is to protect the homeland, Homeland Security. Do you guys feel betrayed?
Yes.
I thought so. Ms. Pearlstein, are you familiar with Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, often known as the Invasion Clause?
Yes, I've read the Constitution.
That's not what I asked, ma'am. I asked if you're familiar with that
Yes.
article.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to read it. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government, and here's the point, and shall protect each of them against invasion. Ms. Nobles, Ms. Dunn, do you think that this Homeland Security Secretary is protecting these states against invasion? Is protecting Arizona?
Arizona is not protected against invasion.
Ms. Pearlstein, after having me read that, do you think that this secretary is protecting the 50 states against invasion?
The word invasion in that clause is not in reference to migrants who are not trying to overthrow the government of the United States.
Oh, it's interesting that you say that, ma'am. Very interesting that you say that. Ma'am, Ms. Pearlstein, have you ever studied unconventional warfare? Any idea what that term means?
I've heard that term used. I'm
What do
not
you
an expert in unconventional warfare.
You have any idea what it might mean? Go ahead, take a stab at it.
I would rather hear your definition.
Okay, great. Do you think in any wild and unprecedented strategy in the history of the world, one of our adversaries might try and send their soldiers to infiltrate our country using our wide open border, not putting them in uniforms, and having them come and present themselves in front of our Border Patrol agents and tell our Border Patrol agents, oh, we're just innocent immigrants. We just want a better life. Do you think that's even possible, Ms. Pearlstein?
Might anyone ever lie at the border? Yes.
Okay. So it is possible that tens of thousands, you know that's how many we're getting a day, right, ma'am? About 10,000 a day? 10 to 15,000 a day? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of any statistics.
Okay, well, I'll fill you in then, ma'am. You're in the Homeland Security Committee. It's about 10 to 15,000 often, sometimes 12,000 a day. That's more than a combat division coming through our southern border from 160 countries, some of which are adversarial. And I'm going to tell you right now, unconventional warfare has been used since the beginning of time. These people aren't stupid. They're using access to our country to bring in individuals who want to do harm to it. I've been in the classified briefs. It's a fact, ma'am. How many families have to be ruined? How many mothers have to sit next to you before you come to understand this is an invasion of our country, and he's in complete dereliction of duty of his constitutional oath to protect and defend the United States of America? How many, ma'am? Would we need to have 100 here today for you?
Impeachment will not address the policy problem you describe.
That's not a policy problem. That is him completely derelicting his oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. I read you the invasion clause. He is not doing that, ma'am. He's in complete dereliction of doing it in accordance with the other laws that other committee members have read to you today. And I think it's sad. This shouldn't be a partisan issue at all, and you know it. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize Ms. Titus, the gentlelady from Nevada.
I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this important hearing. Does anybody on the panel know what the national debt of the United States is? Mr. Moore, you look like you were hitting your button first.
It's a lot, 37 trillion, maybe.
34 trillion?
34.
You guys know that we spent about $1 trillion in the last 90 days that we don't have? You guys know what the annual deficit is every single year up here? $2 trillion plus, about 200 billion a month. So when you hear, excuse me, one of my colleagues just talked about continuing resolution. Does anybody know what that means? What does it mean, Mr. Lemke?
It means that the agencies get funded at a base level from the previous year.
Yep.
Yep, with no incremental funding.
So you guys, right?
Program.
So basically funding at the same level, right? So you guys are all business owners, right? You guys understand budgeting. If you had something similar to a $2 trillion deficit annually, what do you think you'd be doing as a business owner?
That's pretty easy if you...
Would you continue funding your business at the same level you were last year?
Absolutely not.
What about you, Mr. Moore?
Definitely not.
Mr. Christ?
No, sir.
Ma'am?
No.
Why do you think we do that up here? Because it's so easy to spend your money. Nobody wants to say no. Right? How many, you guys, a lot of you rely on government contracts, is that correct?
We are 100% federal contractor.
When this whole thing goes bust, how many government contracts do you think you're going to get?
I'm guessing 0.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. Moore?
None.
Do you think that's possible, or do you think we can just continue to print money that we don't have?
I hope that we don't continue to print money that we don't have.
Well, Do you see that changing? Do you guys spend any amount of time up here on Capitol Hill?
A little bit.
Yeah. Do you see that changing, Mr. Lemke, with the conversations you've had?
I haven't seen it change in the time I've been watching.
I have meetings all the time. Nobody ever asks that we quit giving them money or give them less money.
No, sir. The hole gets bigger.
The only reason I bring that up is because there's obviously I would honestly wish the best for you and your businesses and your employees. I really do. As a small business owner myself and a very small business owner, probably about 20, 30 employees, I think 50 or 60 at most. I understand how tough it is to start a small business, maintain it, make sure my employees are taken care of. But there's a bigger problem up here that rarely gets talked about, and that is our spending problem up here. And it concerns me because, when I look at business owners like you that rely on the government and government contracts, because what we do up here is not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. And you even hear when people talk about, these CRs, these continuing resolutions with disdain, right? The problem is these CRs are spending at the same level. And you just had 4 business owners that have all been successful say, that's not sustainable. We couldn't do that in our own business. Yet we arrogantly do that every single time up here. Go ahead, sir.
May I add something? CRs are one thing, shutdowns are another.
Yeah.
Right? CRs are easier to, we've operated under CRs for so long, so many years. That's one thing, but it's the shutdowns that scare us to death, right? Because then we're having to make really hard decisions about what we do with the families that rely on our companies to feed their families, right?
Right.
And so those are testy times, and the longer they go, and there's been a few good ones, those are the ones I think that bother us the most, scare us.
Well, on this same train of thought, if you guys had one bit of advice that you could give us on how to make sure that we don't completely destroy our national economy and cause your businesses to go completely under because there's no more government contracts, do you guys have anything that you'd like to say to the members of Congress on this panel? Go ahead, Mr. Lemke.
Not in 5 seconds, no.
Go ahead, Mr. Moore, anything? Mr. Chairman might give us a few extra seconds.
Create more jobs, more prosperity, bigger tax base would be my advice.
Pro-growth?
Pro-growth.
Gotcha. Mr. Chris?
Go ahead.
I would recommend taking a look at the small business standards and distributing some of that revenue throughout that organization reasonably, not to the gorillas in the room that are just underneath that glass ceiling that I mentioned, that can destroy these small businesses. You can imagine us going up against a $200 million a year company.
Okay.
We're never going to.
I think we ran out of time. Sorry, ma'am. We would have given you time, but we ran out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me go over.
Thank you. Yields back. I now recognize Mr. Musser, Representative Musser from great state of Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all very
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Matt and Ms. Stefanik, for leading on this. You know what I love about this, watching where President Trump is at in the polls? I love it because it shows the American people don't trust you guys. And they shouldn't, because you guys are full of it and everybody knows it. There's a few honest journalists in this town, but they're very few and far between. You know how I know it wasn't an insurrection? Because he hasn't been charged with insurrection. And we can all see by the lawfare how he's facing up over 700 years in jail right now, how they've tried to destroy this man, destroy his businesses, that if they felt they had an inkling of a chance of convicting President Trump of jaywalking or insurrection, they would absolutely charge him. You know how else I know it's not an insurrection? Because this is the first insurrection in the history of the world where the people that were a part of it were unarmed. It's pretty hard to do if you walk around and see how many individuals are carrying firearms. All right. Last thing I want to say about how I know it's not an insurrection is because I actually listened to the words of the president. If you're trying to stoke an insurrection, you don't tell the people listening, hey, I want you to go over there peacefully and patriotically. All right? This is not an insurrection. What it is a party that's scared to death of this man because he's America first, and he's shown time and time again he's willing to bust up the swamp, and he continues to beat you like a drum. That's what this is really about. And for all you journalists out there, you know, that are pretty cowardly, some in this room right now, you don't have the balls to write the truth. And even if you did, your publishers wouldn't publish it because you're a part of a propaganda outlet, probably one of the biggest in the history of the world. If you had any courage, I want you to ask some questions about that day, January 6th, that we keep talking about. Why has the pipe bomber not been caught yet? Huh? Why has the pipe bomber not been caught? The one individual that could have committed multiple mass casualties has not been caught yet. Go follow some of Beatty's reporting over at Revolver News. He's got some evidence for you guys. What's going on up here with January 6th is there's a pretty big cover-up actually going on up here in Capitol Hill about some of the involvement of our government, and it's quite unsavory. And I want to acknowledge Rep. Massey's work on this lately and others who have been trying to get to the bottom of it. But here's some other questions for you journalists to ask. Why did it take so long for Ray Epps to be charged? Go watch videos of Ray Epps on that day and how he was stoking the entire thing and how long it took him to be charged. And yet there were so many people that were brought into the DC jail, and they're still there to this day. So if you guys want to ask some questions, those are some questions. But the bottom line is we all know President Trump did not commit insurrection, and he's probably going to be the president of the United States once again. And so I'm happy to be a part of this resolution. I'm happy to support the president, and I'm happy to call out all you little cowardly liars in the press. Thank you. I want to now welcome my friend Harriet Hageman to come up. She here? All right, going down the list. Oh, you thought I was bad. Wait till this one gets up here. I want to welcome Miss Anna Paulina Luna.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I now recognize Mr. Crane from Arizona for 5 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's interesting because I hear my colleagues on the other side of the aisle consistently talk about how we can't agree on anything over here on the Republican side of the aisle. You know, and there's some truth to that. There has been, you know, definitely some debates, some arguments within our own party. But one thing that we can agree upon is that you're doing a horrible job, sir, and that you needed to be impeached. That's pretty wild, seeing as how we've been able to agree upon very few things and with the margin that we have. But we could all come together, look at the data, hear the stories back in the district, listen to the family members that have been destroyed because of your complete dereliction of duty, and we all agree that you needed to be impeached. Secretary Mayorkas, did you swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States?
Yes, I did, Congressman.
Yeah? How many times have you done that?
I certainly can identify 5 when I
Okay, thank you.
in.
Are you aware of Article 4, Section 4? Do you know what that article is?
There may be more than 5 instances. I just want to be clear to the
Yeah,
best.
okay, great. Article 4, Section 4, are you familiar with that article?
When I was sworn in as an assistant.
Okay, since you're not going to answer, it's called the Invasion Clause. Do you know what the Invasion Clause says, sir?
The second time was.
The federal government will protect and defend each state from invasion, okay? Since you don't seem to be getting it, I had our staff here bring up this graph here. This is you. This is the last administration. Again, you, last administration. That looks like an invasion on a graph. We've heard from the people that have sat here and testified in these chambers about their family members being raped and murdered by people that weren't supposed to be here, that your administration allowed to be here and then didn't keep track of, didn't deport, didn't detain. Tell me, sir, how you haven't allowed an invasion into this country.
Congressman, I am incredibly proud to support the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security
who enforce the laws of the United States every single day, many of whom risk their lives to secure our borders.
Yeah, despite your horrific leadership, yes, they do. And I'm proud to know many of them as well. They are great people. But we all know what the morale is like in the Border Patrol right now, and it's horrible. I hear it from Border Patrol agents every day. Again, sir, my question is, how have you not violated your oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, specifically Article 4, Section 4, which says that you, as Homeland Security, will protect each state from invasion? Again, you, last administration. How can you make that argument?
I work every day, quite proudly, to advance the security of the border and support the men and women of the Department of Homeland
You may be
Security.
working every day, but it seems as if you're working for the other side of the aisle. It seems as if you're working for our enemies. And that's exactly what the American people see. That's exactly why they supported us impeaching you. And that's exactly why you had so many members of this conference that is often divided come together to impeach you, sir. Let me ask you this question, Secretary Mayorkas. Do you think our enemies are stupid?
Congressman, you could launch whatever false and deplorable
Do you
accusations.
think our adversaries are stupid, sir?
Congressman, our adversaries vary in capability, and we address the defense of the United States and the interests of the United States accordingly.
No, you're not. Okay, you are not doing that. As a matter of fact, do you think it's possible that maybe some of our adversaries, the most dangerous ones like the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, the Russians, etc., might employ unconventional warfare and send their soldiers, because our border is wide open, through the southern border without a uniform, without firearms, with instructions to wreak havoc in this country once they're here, once you've allowed them to be here? Do you think that's possible, Secretary Mayorkas?
Congressman, over the last 11 months, we have removed or returned 630,000 people, more than any fiscal year since 2013. And
Well, you're bragging about how much you've returned, but you don't want to brag about how many you've let in, do you?
Congressman, individuals who arrive and claim asylum are placed in immigration enforcement proceedings. If they do not qualify for relief under our laws, we seek to remove them in enforcing our laws.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. Chair will now recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, another one of our new great members from this state.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to wave on to this committee. Thank you to my colleague, Mr. Siscomani, for hosting this in his district. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing us to have this here. Thank you, everybody in attendance, and thank you to the panel for showing up today. I'm going to read you guys a quote. I want to see if you guys know where this comes from. We're a nation who says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come. Anybody know who said that? Yep, bingo. And those who come seeking asylum, we should immediately have the capacity to absorb them, keep them safe until they can be heard. Anybody know who said that? Yeah, candidate Biden. First quote was 9/12/19. Second quote was 6/27/19. Anybody that has a brain in their head, ears, eyes, knew exactly what was going to happen as soon as this individual became the president of the United States. They were going to throw that border wide open. Why? A lot of us are asking why, and I think we're going to get into that today. I think because they don't give a damn about you guys. That's what I think. And I've been in enough of these hearings. I'm on the Homeland Security Committee. I'm not going to mince words anymore. I've talked to enough families that have lost their loved ones to fentanyl, MS-13 gang members, individuals on the terror watch list. We've talked to hospital administrators talking to us about how overrun their facilities are. I've seen enough of the data, enough of the evidence. Do you guys think that President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas don't know what's going on? Do you think they haven't heard enough information yet? I said I'm not going to mince words. I think it's treasonous. I absolutely do. All right. I just looked up. Yeah. And I know that some people say, oh, that doesn't reach the legal definition of treasonous. Treasonous involving or guilty of the crime of betraying one's country. Do you guys feel betrayed? I know I do. I know I do, and I know a lot of you guys do too.
I'm going to read you guys something from the Constitution of the United States. This is Article 4, Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republic form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. Do you guys think that President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States? No. Yep, they did. Are they doing that for you guys? No. How about, what do you think, Mr. Clem? Are they doing that?
I don't think they're doing it to the best of their ability, that's for sure.
Best of their ability? Mr. Clem, why do you think they developed an app to make it easier to get people into this country?
All the things that this administration has done in regards to the border are like giving somebody a bucket to bail water out of your sinking boat as opposed to fixing the leak. And that's what that app does, is to facilitate people in and in their minds get them out of Border Patrol's custody quicker. It has nothing to do with securing the border. The border is a national security threat if we don't get it secured. So yes, it's about facilitating people into this country, not forcing people to do things the right way.
All right. You guys all have smartphones, right? Why do you guys have apps on your phone? Navigation apps, music apps, to make it easier for you guys to do certain functions, right? That's why they created an app, guys, to make it easier for them to flood this country with illegals. And we could sit here and we could talk about the different reasons why they're doing it, but the bottom line is this is a complete dereliction of duty, and they are betraying you, the American people. They don't care. They don't care. Mr. Karchner, what do you think, sir? Do you think this administration is stupid? Do you think they don't know what's going on? Do you think they're so foolish that they don't know the havoc they're wreaking on the American people?
I would dare say that it's no longer ineptness that's going on. I believe there is some truth to the corruption.
It's tough to ascribe anything else, isn't there, after this point? I mean, guys, I had a hearing this week in Homeland Security, and this hasn't even become very mainstream yet, but it was about different foreign adversaries using direct energy weapons against U.S. citizens that completely incapacitate citizens of the United States. You guys might have heard of it, called Havana Syndrome. And then we went down to the SCIF, and we got a classified briefing from some of the people on the panel, and it was one of the most. I'm a former Navy SEAL, so I've traveled around the world and hunted bad guys for a long time. But I can tell you this: when I went down to that SCIF, it was one of the most terrifying briefs that I've ever been a part of. Okay, this is how brazen our enemies are becoming because of how foolish, corrupt, incompetent, and I would actually say wicked we have become. And our leadership has failed us at every turn. So this next election is going to be important. Thank you guys for coming. Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Representative Crane from the great state of Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Whitson, in your opinion, sir, why is the SBA involved itself in election process and registering voters in swing states?
Thank you for that question. So this is part of the executive order. It commanded every single federal agency to take part in this whole of government, get out the vote effort to benefit the Biden administration. And so SBA is one of those tools. And so Michigan, as we mentioned, it's well-known fact that it's a key battleground state. And so it doesn't require a lot of votes to make a significant impact.
Right.
And so that's
right.
what it appears.
What does the SBA stand for, Mr. Whitson? Do you know?
It's the Small Business Administration.
Do you find that odd that the Small Business Administration is involved in getting out the vote in a state that President Biden is down in and absolutely needs to win to stay president?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You said that there's other government agencies doing this as well, Mr. Whitson. Can you go over those real quick?
Yes, so again, that's the Health and Human Services has transformed more than 1,400 federally qualified health centers located in states across the country into voter registration hubs. You got the Department of Labor has turned more than 2,300 American job centers, again, scattered across the country into voter registration hubs. USDA, Department of Education is allowing federal work-study funds to go to college students to become an army of workers for left-wing groups engaging in voter registration activity, again, in strongholds where there's more Democrat votes than there are Republican. So
Yeah.
the list goes on.
Imagine that. You also said this was more alarming than the Zuckerbuck scheme by the Democrats back in 2020. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think that scheme offers the perfect illustrative example of what's going on here. And so Zuckerbuck's people could look at it on the surface and say, this looks funny, but it was only until after the election when we could go in, FGA went in, and we got the exact numbers of where money went, which counties and what amounts, that we could have the proof. And so this is that same scheme, but instead of $400 million, it is the unlimited funding, resources, reach, and power of the federal government and its agencies in every state. So it's Zuckerbucks on steroids.
And we don't even know how much they're spending yet, do we? Because they won't be transparent about it, right?
That's exactly right.
That's what I thought. Ms. Morales, why do you think the SBA is involving itself in, Mr. Morales, why do you think the SBA isn't involving itself in your state, in Indiana?
Well, they're not involving Indiana. I wish they have come to my state and talked to me. Like I said, I would love to work with them when it comes specifically with businesses.
Yeah.
Helping our Hoosier business.
Yeah, they seem to have forgotten that that's their main focus. But I'll tell you, sir, the reason they're not involving themselves in your state is because I checked, and your state is a Republican plus like 11 state. So it's a Republican state. That's why they're not. You're not a swing state. That's why they're not involving themselves there. Do you believe this is election interference, Miss Elaine Parker?
I do believe it's election interference when you're going into a targeted area of state to register people for election. But again, I believe that the SBA should be focused on the small business and advocating for small businesses within the administration. There's a regulatory onslaught that's happening against our small businesses, disproportionately hurts them, and that's what the SBA should be focused on, is protecting their interests.
Absolutely. We've got rising inflation, right? Overregulation, real disposable income down 7.5%, 21% increase in credit card interest rates. But according to Tyler Robinson, who happens to be the special advisor to Administrator Guzman, Robinson claims in a video, this is him saying it, not me, that SBA Administrator Guzman is the most traveled cabinet member, visits battleground states with Democrat members of Congress to help them and Biden get reelected, and that she indirectly campaigns for the president by announcing or highlighting investments in certain communities by the Biden-Harris administration to sway support. But our Democrat colleagues will have you try and convince you to believe this stuff isn't even going on. It's unbelievable. I've heard from the other side today that the act of voter registration, it's not partisan. We all heard that, right? The act of voting, that's not partisan either, right? We heard that. Well, is it when you're targeting blue Democrat-run cities, counties, municipalities? Is that partisan? What do you think, Mr. Winstrom?
It absolutely is. And so it's what campaigns do, right?
Yeah.
Campaigns engage in get out the vote efforts, and they don't try to get out the vote of every kind of voter. They try to get out the vote of the voters that will put them in office. And so that's the problem, is now the federal executive branch is engaging this. A federal executive branch led by a member of one political party is using that apparatus to engage in a get out the vote scheme.
Yeah, and imagine that. And we hear it from the other side about, oh, this is undermining democracy and bipartisanship. Are you kidding me? You guys just tried to put your number one political opponent, President Trump, in jail, right? That's what you're trying to do right now. And now this. And it's just a couple different things. We're not buying any of it, okay? I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to read a headline that was posted about 30 minutes ago on Fox News and a little bit of the article and have you respond to it, sir. Biden DHS reveals 50 migrants still at large as ISIS-affiliated smuggling network brings hundreds to the U.S. The Department of Homeland Security has identified over 400 individuals brought to the U.S. from Eastern European and Central Asian countries by an ISIS-affiliated smuggling network in the past several months. A DH senior official confirmed to Fox News on Wednesday. Officials have arrested over 150 so far that have either been removed, placed in removal proceedings, or are currently receiving additional screening. They would not confirm
of how many match the terror watch list. Of the remaining 50 individuals at large, they acknowledge that a small number may match the terror watch list. Can you respond to that article, sir?
So I'll give this generally the same response I gave before, which is, subject to the classified briefing that you'll receive on this, which I know has already been scheduled, which is that my understanding is that while there was a smuggling network and there are a certain number of individuals who came to the smuggling network.
An ISIS-affiliated smuggling network.
There's a smuggling network for which there's an ISIS affiliation. There has not been any evidence put forward that any of those individuals were terrorist operatives.
Why is this still being allowed to happen, sir?
Why is the smuggling network being allowed to happen?
Yeah, I mean, why are we consistently seeing stories like this?
I can tell you that we are very focused on the smuggling networks, and our colleagues at HSI and FBI and others are zeroing in on these networks. And a lot of what we've done at DHS is to work with the FBI to get a clear understanding of the networks out there. And this is, we spend a lot of time helping to clarify the picture of what the networks are so that we can anticipate whether any of those networks are involved in terrorism.
And I appreciate that you guys are doing that, but wouldn't you say, sir, that you can have all the intelligence in the world, but if you don't have leaders who are willing to execute on that intelligence, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, also, what you do need also, and this is one thing I think it's important, and you asked about what I need or we need, we could use more resources to vote to the border, both DHS but also INA. The more people we have down there interviewing folks along the border, the more likely we're going to find out about bad actors coming across.
And you say that because you know that your headshed, your leadership, won't actually change any of the policies, right?
I say that because that's a truism, that right now we're operating with relatively scant resources.
Let me ask you this. Then. Would we need to surge more people to the border, the same exact southern border that we've had now, if your administration was actually doing its job in protecting the American people?
Well, look, I'm not going to get into sort of platitudes one way or the other than to say that we're going to go where we see the intel need to be. And from when I went through my confirmation hearing, and your colleague from Texas asked me about the border, and I said, based on what I know as a private citizen outside the government still, that's an area where we need to focus our intelligence efforts. That hasn't changed since I got in. So we're going to continue to focus there.
Yeah, let me shift real quick to the advisory board. According to a May 17, 2024 department press release, DHS decided to rebrand the experts group as the Homeland Intelligence Advisory Board. The 19 members of the disbanded experts group have simply been reconstituted as members of the board. This is troublesome given that it appears DHS is attempting to mislead Congress and the American public by simply renaming a controversial advisory committee. We have also learned that DHS has exempted this board from public notice, reporting, and open meeting provisions that are normally required by the Federal Advisory Committee Act. Why is this, sir?
Well, let me just clarify one thing, because whenever I hear a question with the word mislead, I feel I've got to respond to that. There was no misleading done at all. In fact, if you look at the settlement agreement, the public settlement agreement that ended the litigation that led to us disbanding the original group, we said we have the right to constitute a new group under the FACA law. And we said that in black and white. The other party, the litigation, accepted it. The judge accepted it.
That's great. Real quick, sir, is it true that Mr. Brennan and Mr. Clapper are on this advisory group?
They were on the original experts group, and as we announced, we will be seeking...
Didn't both of those gentlemen say that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? Why would you want... my question, sir, is why would you want guys that are putting out very false information publicly to the American people? Why would you want them on your advisory committee?
I want people who can help us do what I'm talking about here, which is transform an organization. We're trying to transform an intelligence organization. There's one person in the world...
Is telling the truth a part of helping you guys?
Could I answer, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's one person in the world who's recently transformed an intelligence agency, the CIA, John Brennan. I don't care what his politics are. I care that he's honest with us, he brings his perspective, and he donates his time to us to help us...
Transformed it good or bad?
That's for others to understand, to assess.
Exactly.
But I want to hear that experience. Jim Clapper, once again, I don't care what his politics are, but he was the director of national intelligence. He coordinated all the different.
I don't care what his politics are as long as he doesn't weaponize them. But
Exactly.
clearly he has.
Well-
And that's why I asked you, didn't both of these guys say that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation? And these are intelligence guys. Everybody knew that that laptop was
Chairman.
legitimate. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields back. The ranking member is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the letter that the gentleman from Arizona is referring to, which outlines why 4 dozen intelligence officials who signed it believed, based on the available information at the time, that the emails.
Can the ranking member state the title of the article?
It's the letter that the gentleman from Arizona was referring to.
Without objection, so
was
ordered.
signed by multiple intelligence
Without
officials.
objection, so ordered.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lady yields back, and I recognize Representative Crane from the great state of Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the hearing today. I want to start with you, Ms. Franks. I believe you said the government has the right to participate in expressing its viewpoint. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't, respectfully, Ms. Franks, I don't think that's what we're really talking about here today. We're not talking about the government expressing its viewpoints. What we're really talking about is when the government pays and uses taxpayer dollars to fund these entities that we're talking about here today that actually discredit some of these news sites and drives away their advertisers. Do you think that's fair as well?
What is fair is for the government to be able to fund projects and organizations that do certain things with those funds that may include competing in the marketplace of ideas, and they may be winning in the marketplace of ideas, but the government is not making those choices. And when certain news outlets lose in the marketplace of ideas, they may want to blame the government for that, but maybe they're just losers.
So, okay, Ms. Franks, do you think...
It's actually Dr. Franks.
Miss, what's that?
It's actually Dr. Franks.
Okay, Dr. Franks, sorry. Ms. Jonas here said that when she was looking at these entities and the organizations that they had blacklisted, every single one of them was a conservative-leaning organization. Do you think that's fair as well? Is that okay? Dr. Franks?
Use a different name, so I wasn't sure you were talking to me.
Yeah, I'm still talking to you. I'm still looking at you. I'm still talking to you.
Would you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, you seem to have a problem paying attention to the questions being asked of you today. I'll repeat it for you again. Do you think that it's okay that these entities that are blacklisting companies, all of the companies on the list that are blacklisted are conservative outlets?
Do I think that it is okay for a company, for a nonprofit organization to develop tools that offer rankings, in other words, offer speech of criticism, critical speech about certain businesses? Yes, I think that's okay because that is protected First Amendment activity.
So you think it's okay for the federal government to be using our tax dollars to basically, through a proxy, blacklist one side of the aisle? You think that's okay?
I do not, because that is not what is happening.
Really? How so?
Yes.
Then why are all the companies on the list, the blacklist, conservative groups?
I think that's something that conservatives would need to answer.
No, I think that's something you need to answer.
I'm not
Because
a
we're talking about
representative of any of these
censorship here, and there's only one group of people being censored.
No one is being censored.
Miss
according
Eunice
to what
here,
is being
Miss Eunice
described
here admitted that she's not even a Republican. She leans left. Yet she's telling us that all of the companies on the blacklist are conservative groups. How do you square that, doctor?
I don't have to square that because, as I said, the focus
I know, because you don't have to make any sense, do you?
May I answer the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
The First Amendment has certain principles and certain rules. People may not like them. People may disagree with them. People may not like the fact that someone out there may say conservatives are all bad or liberals are all bad. The correct response to not liking that is to engage in your own speech, as is often happening here. It is not to say, oh, this is censorship, we're being silenced. It's simply to say, we disagree with what's being said here. Try to compete, and if you are good enough, maybe you'll win.
Miss Jonas, what do you have to say about what Dr. Franks just said?
I want to be clear that this wasn't just about NewsGuard and GDI. The government was funding hundreds, at least 300 tools and technologies that were designed to censor speech. Some of them weren't even pretending to censor foreign disinformation, quote unquote disinformation. Of course, that's a subjective term. So they were hosting COVID disinformation challenges where they were giving grants to companies who showed that they were the best at censoring COVID disinformation. COVID is not really a national security or foreign topic, even if it, it has some tinges of that. So this was about the government using its authority. The government can't use its authority, can't use its power, and can't use its money in order to censor views it doesn't like. It's the government, yes, it has a right to censor, to express its own views, but not to use those views to censor. That's where it stops. And the court expressly said that in Vulo recently, actually.
Mr. Weingarten, I'm going to allow you to comment on this exchange.
I'd just say briefly, we've heard a robust defense of the government's purported right to speak, which, as we've established, really looks like a right to censor. And the censors portrayed as the victims here, but American speech en masse has been censored by this censorship industrial complex on a slew of issues that expressly reflect protected political speech. And if a stop isn't put to it, we're going to lose this right in toto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
5 minutes of question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the staff to go ahead and play the video that I took at the site yesterday. All right, guys, I'm up here on the building where the supposed sniper took his shot. It's not that steep at all. We just had a 70-year-old man back here climb up on the roof easily. See that water tower behind me? Had Secret Service or anybody had sniper teams up there, this guy wouldn't have made it 5 feet up this roof. He would have been taken out. Behind me, you see the windows that Secret Service was supposedly in the second floor of this building behind. Makes you wonder why they weren't able to quickly dispatch the individual. And then behind me, back over here where those red roofs are, that's where the— Can you guys cut it right there, please? President was giving his speech from. A lot of questions here in Butler. Cut it. Thank you. All right, Colonel Paris, did you notice when you showed up on site what the tallest structure on the site was?
I can't say at the moment that I arrived that I did, no, sir.
Okay. Now that you've had a chance to go back and look over it, what is the tallest structure on that site?
The water tower, sir.
Absolutely. Colonel, do you know how far the water tower was from the roof where the shooter took his shots?
I do not.
160 yards, sir. Who made the decision, Colonel, not to put a counter-sniper team on the tallest structure by far on the site with 360-degree surveillance? Do you have any idea?
I do not know, sir.
Okay. We'd like to get that answer. Did you see the video that showed me sticking my phone out the second-story window? Did you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Exposing the coverage of the window of the entire roof. Are you aware that local law enforcement and Secret Service had full access to that building in that room?
My understanding is that they did.
Yeah. Why weren't security teams, sir, on site able to spot a 20-year-old kid with zero camouflage crawling up a white roof with an AR-15 that several rally goers were screaming and yelling and pointing out, and they noticed him, and they weren't even there to conduct security. They were there to watch the president. Do you have any idea why the security teams couldn't find that guy?
I do not, sir.
Would the gentleman yield for just a second
yes,
on that? So just for clarification, it was the ESU guys that were manning those buildings?
Yep.
And they left because of the call of the suspicious person. So they left their post there to go look for him. They're the same individuals who attempted to climb up the building and were scared away by the shooter pointing the gun, right?
I reclaim my time. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just wondering why they weren't able to find him, because even while they were looking, they could have still looked out that window that they had access to. All right. Colonel Paris, I'm just going to say it. Are you aware, sir, that many Americans believe this was very likely not a lone shooter, but a coordinated assassination attempt? Have you been getting those messages from people like I have?
I have not, sir.
You haven't? Well, there's a lot of people in this room that have been getting the same messages. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that a lot of Americans are like, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make sense, guys? How could this many things have gone wrong, right? Like the things I pointed out, a 20-year-old kid, got 150 yards of the President of the United States with an AR-15, flew a drone to conduct site surveillance,
was spotted with a rangefinder ranging targets, then lost, had advanced explosive devices on him with no military training. Nobody was placed in the most obvious spot to conduct counter-sniper operations. I was a sniper in the SEAL teams, Colonel. As soon as I got out of the SUV and I saw that water tower, I was like, that's exactly where I'd be. Put me right there. So obvious. After partisan attempts to bankrupt him, imprison him for 750 years, and countless depictions as a modern-day Hitler, are you surprised, sir, that a lot of Americans are like, maybe there's more to this story?
I wouldn't begin to speculate about what the American people think, sir.
Colonel, did your team make entry and conduct investigation at the suspect's home prior to this shooting?
Excuse me, sir? I asked that question.
Did your team make entry and conduct any investigation at the suspect's home?
I believe we had people that participated in that securing of it. There were bomb assets that we provided.
Mr. Chairman, can I have 30 more seconds?
Yeah, I'm letting everybody kind of.
Okay.
On the night of. Since then, none.
Did you get any reports from any of your agents of anything fishy at the home?
I was briefed on.
Was there any silverware found in the home or trash?
I have nothing in the briefing that I was given, sir.
Was it extremely clean, almost like a medical lab? Were you given any of those reports?
I wasn't giving any of those details, sir.
Okay, that's what I'm hearing. Interesting. The last thing I want to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, this is article, opinion from, I believe, the Washington Post by Robert Kagan. A Trump dictatorship is increasingly inevitable. We should stop pretending. This article compares Trump to Caesar and attempts to justify the assassination of President Trump. And I think even though we want to dodge around it and not make this partisan, I think we all know that a lot of this has to do with the rhetoric, the very violent rhetoric that has led up to this. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields, and so ordered on the entry of that into the record. I now recognize Mr. Burkeen for 5 minutes of testimony or witness questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alexander, would you mind moving that just a little bit forward here so I can... Colonel Paris, can you see that, or am I obstructing your view?
I believe I can see it, sir.
You'll bet. Mr. Biggs, Mr. Schaefer, thank you so much. At this point, we will turn it over for 10 minutes with the Honorable Eli Crane.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Prince. I know you have a bit of a public profile, but I'm not sure everybody here understands the depth of your experience here. What was the name of the organization that you founded, sir? Blackwater. How many employees did you have at Blackwater when you ended up selling the company?
At peak of about 3,500 Americans deployed, doing everything from very high-end executive security to aviation and training.
3,500. That's it's pretty large company.
Brigade size.
Yeah. With other protective companies that did executive protection around the world, how did you guys rack and stack? Were you one of the largest companies, one of the smaller companies?
I'd say we were the largest doing that. We never really intended to be in the security business. I started after the SEAL teams and built a training facility. SEAL teams have been using private facilities since the 1970s, and no one had done one on an industrial scale. And started, and then as the demand signal of 2 wars and all the gaps created by trying to take a conventional military into a counterinsurgency created a lot of demand signal, and so we responded by providing a lot of executive security and ended up doing most of the diplomatic security work for almost 10 years.
Yeah. Though there's some similarities between what the Secret Service does and what you had to do overseas, there are definitely some differences.
Sure. Correct. In fact, we interacted with the Secret Service whenever the president or some other senior person was coming over. In fact, before we took over security first for Paul Bremer in Iraq, the Secret Service came over to do a study if they wanted to handle it, and they didn't want to touch it at all because they are used to being able to shut down everything and create their own bubble. You can't do that in an active war zone, so that job fell to us, and we grew into that. It was, and that expertise also led us to doing a lot of training for other State Department programs where we'd had at least a dozen countries send their Secret Service equivalents that protected their presidents, and whether that's Lebanon, Colombia, Taiwan, a lot of places with active threats and very active, whether it's Sicarios or Hezbollah, we prepped those units to face that kind of threat. And, you know, we did it, we did 100,000 missions. No one under our care was ever killed or injured.
I want you to repeat that, sir. Did you guys ever lose a protectee?
No, we did not.
Thank you. You said something interesting on an episode of Sean Ryan that I saw a couple weeks ago. You said, it's in, you know, thank God it was a 20-year-old kid and not a 10-man Hezbollah team. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure, because the fact that a 20-year-old kid could get his drone in the air, could get himself into a firing position only 140 yards away. 140 yards is point-blank range. My then 12-year-old son could have made that shot. Yep. And thank God that 20-year-old aimed at a headshot at President Trump, because if he'd aimed center mass, President Trump would probably be dead, because I don't think he was wearing plates. He wasn't wearing any kind of body armor that would have stopped that rifle round. And a 78-year-old man taking a gunshot wound to the upper chest is not going to go well. A Hezbollah team or ISIS or you name the terrorist organization that actually knows what they're doing would have been successful that day. And the Secret Service was nearly defeated by a 20-year-old, and we all, including Donald Trump, literally dodged a bullet that day.
So I want to double down on that real quick. In your opinion, in your professional opinion, is the Secret Service in its current form and leadership able to stop a threat like that?
President Trump was definitely deprived of resources that day for whatever their political reason. They had 1/3 the amount of agents covering him as were covering Jill Biden in the same region at an indoor event. She had 12 post holders covering her. Again, no statutory or constitutional authority for the First Lady. Donald J. Trump was awarded, had 4 Secret Service agents assigned. And I think even when you look at the debacle of a failure of the advance team to actually secure the perimeter and to deny the obvious sniper hotel locations where a bad guy is going to set up from, to the complete lack of coordination and communication, not communicating with the local law enforcement, not taking the radios of local law, come on, to even when shots were fired, the clumsy, unprofessional way of getting the protectee off the X. There was catastrophic failure across the entire enterprise.
Thank you. Mr. Bongino, I want to turn to you real quick. As somebody with a lot of experience in the Secret Service, is it correct, sir, that you at this point have members of the Secret Service whistleblowing and calling you right now to talk to you about the culture of the Secret Service?
There were so many. It's getting to the point now where I thank them and say, but I've already heard that from 10 other guys. And I bring that up because none of these problems are new. Anybody telling you that is lying directly to your face, and you better hope they're not under oath. Anyone is suggesting in a congressional hearing or elsewhere that these problems are new, the personnel problems, the logistics problems, the manpower problems, the technology problems. I just told you a sad running joke in the service when I was there. I'm gone since 2011. Last time I checked, it's 2024. It was yesterday's technology tomorrow. And other things here that are inexcusable that have been brought up before, like Ben and Eric just brought up. The communication failures are basic. This isn't like the Secret Service $1 million radio system that uses NSA-level encryption magically broke down that day. They literally handed them a radio they didn't take. This is why when Congressman Mills says, you know, borderline criminal negligence, you should take that seriously. What could possibly be your excuse to say, you know what, I don't really need to communicate with the law enforcement guys out there on the scene. We asked to, they had no obligation to be there. It's a Secret Service's job to protect the president. Out of a courtesy, they showed up. And you don't even have the respect of these local law enforcement people, respect for them to take the radio? I mean, where was the CP, the command post? The way this works, so everybody understands, or it's supposed to and didn't that day, for reasons still unexplained outside of, again, obscene negligence, any trip for a high-level protectee, you're supposed to have a command post that runs the whole trip at the airport or whatever. They'll communicate with everyone. But those individual sites, like in Butler County, have security rooms themselves, which are kind of mini CPs at each site. Where was it? According to what Ben said before, and from what I've heard, it was either not there or the locals were running it, offered communications, and the Secret Service, whose job it was that day to protect President Trump, said, we're going to pass on the comms. Really, you described it as catastrophic. He's 100% correct. Eric knows exactly what he's talking about. Just apocalyptic failure.
Mr. Bongino, in your opinion, is the Secret Service in a better spot today with Director Rowe in charge?
No, it's worse. And sadly, I'm glad this is all being recorded, because when something else happens, and I hope it doesn't, I pray to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, that I'm wrong. That you play this and go, look, that guy was crazy. You think this is the last incident, you're out of your mind. We have seen these incidents over and over. We saw the Georgia grenade incident with President Bush. They overtook the magnetometers. The Secret Service leadership in charge now with the exact same people. Exact same. Can you imagine a C-suite at a company that makes widgets? We find out that there's a design defect. The widget explodes and kills 10 people, and the CTO gets a promotion to CEO. You understand that's what happened here, correct? These are the same people. Kim Cheadle, the director, wasn't even fired. She was allowed to resign. She'll go get some cushy job somewhere, and her deputy, who is one of the guys behind these stupid waste of time things like agents wearing red ties on the detail, because this actually happened, by the way. These people will tell you this under oath if you get the right people. He was concerned about the tie color of the agents on the detail because it seemed to imply he supported President Trump. Congressman Biggs wearing a red tie. You're wearing a semi-red tie. It has nothing to do with anything. This is the kind of stuff the Secret Service was actually wasting their time with while withholding CSU counter surveillance assets and counter sniper assets from probably the most threatened man on earth. If you can explain it, good luck, because that's not the agency I worked for.
My last question is for Ben Schaefer. In your opinion, Mr. Schaefer, why were counter snipers in AGR that had access to the entire building, from what we've been told, not able to see crooks crawling up the roof when we've seen several videos from the ground level taken by bystanders and individuals not even tasked to be doing security, were able to photograph crooks wearing no camouflage, crawling on a white roof? Why were the snipers, the local snipers, not able to see crooks and dispatch of him?
I can only pass this knowledge through secondhand communications. I was not privy to that location or to survey that ahead of time. Although I have spoken to those individuals that were placed in that room that day, based on the depth of the room, their placements, and the limited field of view that those windows provided. They were pretty narrow, as most standard residential windows are held. The angle was too hard for them to see that far to their east, which if they would have been facing south.
Thank you so much. Appreciate my colleague.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Crane, the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you,
from a
Mr.
border state,
Yep.
for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Marin, thank you so much for coming here. I want to thank the panelists for coming as well. Ms. Marin, in your opinion, how many more beautiful young Americans must be brutalized, raped, and killed by people who weren't supposed to be here in the first place before this administration does anything about it?
There should be none. There should have, my goodness, when in February of 2023, media blasted all over national TV stations all over the United States pictures of hundreds of thousands of immigrants swarming towards our southern border. Biden and Harris administration could have stopped it before they even reached the border. They could have said, stay in your country or stay in Mexico, and then vet them one by one. So they saw them coming, and they opened the doors and just allowed everyone to come in.
Thank you.
Sheriff, why do you believe that border walls are racist?
Well, Reagan was against border walls. He told Mikhail Gorbachev, tear down this wall. The Soviet Union said they were emerging into an era of freedom, and he said, prove it, tear down the walls. Only 8% of the world's land borders have any structure at all, not a wall, not a fence, not even a line of rocks. If you go through Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, even the Canadian border.
That's not what I asked you, Sheriff. I said, why do you believe they're racist? You said in your written testimony, and certain policies smack of racism. For example, a wall was never suggested for the Canadian border.
Well, yeah, the Canadian border is known as generally a white population, whereas the southwestern border is generally a brown population, so it smacks of racism. And Title 42 was never aggressively enforced on the Canadian border.
Sheriff, do you think that if the mass majority of illegal immigration coming into the United States of America was coming from the northern border, that Americans would demand the same thing?
I don't know.
I think you probably do know that, sir, because it's not about race with the American people. Matter of fact, most American people support legal immigration. It's the illegal immigration. It has nothing to do with race. Sheriff, do you have a wall at your house?
A what?
Do you have a wall at your house,
No,
Sheriff?
I do not.
Do you have a front door on your house?
Yes, I do.
Why not just leave it open, Sheriff?
I leave it unlocked, but, I do have a door.
Yeah, most people have walls and doors on their house, not because they hate the other people on the outside. It's because they love the people on the inside, Sheriff. What about prison? What about prisons, Sheriff? They have walls around them as well. Are those racist?
No, I would say they're not.
Yeah, they're not. What about the White House? It has a wall around it too as well, doesn't it? Do you think that's racist? Do you think?
I didn't say that walls are generically racist.
Okay, well, you said, and certain policies smack of racism.
Yes, it does.
Right.
Proposing a wall on the southern border and not the Canadian border.
Well, I just told you, where's the majority of illegal immigration coming into the United States, sir? Northern or southern border? Go ahead.
Probably the southern border.
Yeah, you know it is, okay? Thank you. All right. Sheriff, did you have to swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States to become sheriff?
Yes, I have, multiple times.
Are you familiar with Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, Sheriff?
Can you remind me what it says?
It's often known as the Invasion Clause. The U.S. government guarantees the protection of our states from invasion and domestic violence.
Yes, I've heard that.
Okay, so could it be, Sheriff, that part of the reason we suggested a border wall, because anybody that knows security understands that a wall is just one part of a security system designed to keep our citizens safe of all races? Could that be it, Sheriff, and maybe not racism?
No, I don't think there's an invasion, and there's not a clause been activated in the Constitution that, suggests that this is an invasion. It's not an invasion.
Yeah,
it's the same thing I've seen my whole life.
Yeah, well, I think Miss Morin and other moms who have lost their children brutally raped, murdered, drug off into the woods would highly disagree with that comment. And if you looked at the data and the graph that's been presented here today, it's obviously an invasion.
It's not a
so much
military
so,
invasion.
hold on, I'm not done yet. So much so that Kamala Harris has actually changed her position now on border security because she realizes what a complete catastrophe it is. Mr. Heitke, you've been a Border Patrol chief. Do you agree with Sheriff Hathaway here that implementing a wall as part of a security system is racist?
No, I do not.
Have you ever seen a wall that stopped one race of people from getting in and allowed other races of people to come into the country? Have you ever seen that?
No.
Didn't think so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Menendez, for 5 minutes questioning.